Yes, new episode on phrasing. I'm super excited to talk about this because this is a question I get asked all the time when I'm on tour or when I'm giving lessons. Apparently, I phrase things a little differently maybe, and it tends to be over the bar line, and usually the phrasing comes from the groove that I'm playing. Yeah, so I just want to dive into some of this stuff. So phrasing is basically a grouping of notes put together. It's a very loose thing. But I also think of phrasing in terms of grooves, right? So I talked in a lesson about groove construction. And to me, phrasing is how you're just putting together those notes, okay? So if you start with the most simple thing, the first groove that you kind of learn, right? So let's say it's 1, 2, ready, So that's pretty down the center. It's kind of a little bit swung. So how can we phrase that a little differently? People will say, well, why did you add that lope? Or why did you put the fill there? Or why did you come back in on the and of one and not crash on one all the time? So to me, all of that stuff comes back to what I've been talking about for all of these episodes is listening to music, right? So let's take a real simple beat, and I'm gonna slowly start to add little things here and there, right? So I will morph a straight beat into something that's phrased a little bit longer, okay? So keep track, count out loud, and follow along, okay? So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that started straight, and then started getting into, in my head, I'm thinking we're at a certain point, somebody's soloing and we're kind of pushing it to get it more exciting. So in order for me to do that, I'm not gonna go to the chops thing, right? So if it's that groove, and then we go to the chops thing, it would sound like this, which to me is it's just not as exciting. It's kind of just like, oh, that guy's got good chops. So I'll play you that example. So. So I can't even do that stuff really clean anymore because I don't play like that. It's just moving singles around really fast and people think it's exciting, you know? that kind of stuff is fine. It's just kind of like power punch to the face. And you're really just playing singles. It's almost just like a glorified Wipeout. Which to me, I would rather use space and kind of like look at it like a different angle. Like if you're looking at my hand and you're looking at it from that angle and someone's looking at it from here, you're seeing this, they're seeing this, right? So you would swear you're looking at different objects, but it's just your perspective. So moving that kind of stuff around phrasing wise, okay? So instead of doing the chopsy thing, I may go like, because to me that has more shape, it's a little more elegant, it's not so masculine. I've been talking a lot about lately about the feminine and masculine side of things, where if you take a beat and just play the downbeats real heavy, that to me feels more masculine, right? And this has to do with phrasing. So masculine to me is kind of heavy, right? Powerlifting dude. So okay. Take the same groove, move the upbeats on the hi-hat. So automatically you're getting a different phrase by just switching to the upbeats instead of the downbeats. So phrasing to me is such a loose, open thing, it's hard to kind of contain and give a definition of, well, this is how I phrase things, because it's so much wider than that. Okay, so now that I've been saying that it's this nebulous, hard to define thing, let's try to give you some examples to work on. So the first thing that I typically do is I'm not crashing on one a lot. Okay, I mean, sometimes I am, but coming in and leaving a little space before the next backbeat. So here's an example. I'm gonna play 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, da, do, and got. So on the and of 4, 4, and ta, and then don't come back in until the beat, the backbeat on 2. It just leaves this kind of dope space as opposed to just plowing through everything. So 1, 2, 3. So just off of that one simple idea of 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and so to me, a big thing too, a lot of people struggle with because they can't sing the idea in the first place. They say, man, you have these great phrasings, you have these great phrases, and you can't get to that if you can't sing it. So if I'm gonna sing do back do back do dagoon ga 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 dak dak so back that's good do good ga ga do 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 go do back do back ba 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 that that should sound really exactly like the groove I'm gonna play. You know what I mean? In my head, I know exactly how that's gonna fall out. So let's try that again. Again. Crash on the end of 4, leave a little space in the beginning so you're not coming back in on 1, obviously. So 1, 2. just gives you a cool jumping off point as opposed to just playing it on the crash on one, right? Sounds so different. You guys have been crashing on one your whole lives, okay? So mixing that up, don't think of it as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and boom, and 2 and 3, 4, boom. You gotta think a lot longer and wider than that. Because if the bass line, you know, I've talked about playing other instruments, if you can't connect to the length of the phrase of the music, right? Like the cadence of what's going on, you're just gonna sound like you're dropping in a drum beat on some random tune and you're not really playing along with what's happening. So even if the groove, let's say it's like a longer beat as opposed to just boom, bop, da-doom, bop, loop, da, boom, da. Let's try to do like a 2-bar phrase, okay? And also, I'm starting on a snare drum on the downbeat, so that's a different phrase in itself. That'll make you play totally differently because you're not, boom, kick out of the gate, which is always a thing. 1, 2, 3, Great kick drum, by the way. Can we talk about this kit for 2 seconds? Birthday kit, you guys have probably seen my posts about it. I'm gonna be 40 May 11th, 2018, and I got together with Ron and Paul Wary to make this kit, and it just sounds and looks stupid. It does sound as good as you're hearing at home in here. It's sort of amazing. Back to phrasing, sorry. It's just such a great, stunning kit to sit behind. It's kind of unbelievable. So there's an exercise on the and of 4. 1 and 2 and back to boom boom back okay. So let's try to come up with another one here. Okay, so we have the practice of crashing on the and of 4, waiting to come back in on kind of onto beat 2. You could maybe lob in like a little dope hi-hat phrase. It's a phrase, I guess. It's a group of 2 notes, so grouping of notes. So let's talk about kind of fill ideas, like an easy way to get kind of maybe a different perspective on fills. So typical fill ideas are like, it's very right hand dominant, very, like I was saying, masculine. As opposed to the upbeat thing, to me, just feels lighter. It changes a groove immediately. So if a lot of your fills are right hand dominant, so those are 16ths, right? So let's start accenting instead of the right hand. Let's start pulling up the left hand stuff. To me, that's just so much more hip. And then you combine the two, the downbeats, right? And the E's and the U's. That to me is real phrasing, when you have control and accents over every part of the phrase, not all just like. Speaking of that, I just played a triplet-y kind of thing. That's another huge part of phrasing, is going between rates. So if your tempo, 3, 4. Having your internal clock here, right? And so knowing all your subdivisions, basically in a nutshell, and being able to call on them with different stickings. So a lot of the time I'm playing triplets with a double stroke roll. For me, it comes out a little bit more interesting on the kit as opposed to just, I might play it this way. Because to me, I feel like I have more leeway, and I mix everything up. Again, practicing them singles. And as you can see at the end, I was mixing in doubles. So being able to do both. And again, all these exercises I've given you, the fives, right? The 5 accent pattern that I've given you in the previous lessons, that automatically puts you in a cool phrase. So if you just take that as a fill idea for phrasing, so you go right, left, right, left. Those are your accents. So right after you do the second left accent, you got a downbeat on the next beat, right on the next 16th note. So you could also practice that with doubles. So, and then I know that second stroke accent on my left hand is gonna be right before the downbeat. So. So combinations of these ideas, once you get comfortable with them all, you have a big vocabulary at this point. So just with the fives thing. So going out of the fives into the E's and the U's. And really, you could just go on your snare and practice these phrases. And then once you get comfortable with different stickings and different rates, start incorporating the rest of the kit. Example. So really being able to stretch, it's very, almost, it's a cheesy thing to say, but it's almost like flying. When you get comfortable with it, you feel like you can kind of do anything and go anywhere. Okay, so new concept we're talking about here to get phrase ideas is when you think about other instruments, saxophone, piano, bass, guitar, a vocalist have great phrasing usually. So taking a melody and trying to play it on the drums, not like a Terry Bozzio thing where you gotta have drums everywhere and take up this entire room, but make do with what you have here. So simple melodies like a Love Supreme, right? You could do it, it's kind of 3 notes, so you could do it between the kick, floor tom, and rack tom. You could also do it floor, rack, snare. So just off of that simple melody, do-dee, do-dee. And these notes obviously are not gonna be tuned exactly to a Love Supreme. I'm not gonna go around tuning my kit to each key center of every song I play. But it gives you a jumping off point and a place to start a solo idea or just to get your independence together between, the melody changes between what drums, if I'm gonna do the kick, as the bass note. So already, I haven't practiced this with my feet or anything, but already I'm gonna see there's gonna be some stuff where my feet wanna do something different with my hi-hat foot. So, you don't have to try to write music on the drums that way. You don't have to go, well, I have to play a bebop tune. I mean, you can do that. Ari Honig's amazing at that stuff. But for me, it helps people kind of get into a zone as opposed to just sitting down and like having to go, well, I don't know what to play, so I'm just gonna go. Fine, but trying to expand just again with phrases. So let's take that floor tom one. All right, so another thing I want to talk about here after working on melodies for phrasing, like the Love Supreme thing I just did, is doing stickings. So taking something like, it's similar to a Swiss triplet, but together, right, left, together, so. So moving that around the kit, okay? So that last thing is really Tony Williams-ish. So phrasing that, whether you're using it as instrumentation, or orchestration, like I've talked about in previous episodes, is how you're arranging that. So together, right, left, that's one way to do it. You can move it just on the drums. So I'll show you how I use that as a phrase or fill, or, fills and phrasing, it kind of blurs to me a little bit. It really breaks down to shapes, you know what I mean? I see things as maybe a low curve or some kind of corkscrew thing, and I'm a pretty visual person, so when I'm playing, that kind of stuff helps me. So let's use this together, right, left idea. It's kind of like a Swiss triplet-y kind of thing. And I'll usually add a kick to break up the pattern, because after a while, just that same phrase. That's where you start combining all your flavors, right? This may be, what would this flavor be? Maybe that's like a nice pizza dough. That's your base. And those crashes are pepperoni, right? I know, this is bizarre. I get off on the food analogies, but I love cooking shows. So, here we go. I'm gonna incorporate this thing, phrase, lick, whatever you wanna call it, into a groove, right? So. So you can see, I mean, that I tried to break up around the kit as much as I could, like this. And once you get comfortable with it, it's basically a double strokes. And depending on the rate that you're using, you know, you can add in the kick drum to fill in, to round it out to different shapes. Okay, so that's one lick you can kind of break up around the drums. And the simplest way to practice it would be this way. Just start with the simplest version before you start going off onto like, and mixing it all up. But I encourage that, but you gotta get the basics down. You can't start your singles here if you can't do this. Okay? And another thing real quick, making sure the stuff is quiet as well as loud. That's huge. So another easy sticking that you guys know that you probably don't need to relearn, but maybe you haven't broken it up this way, is a paradiddle. So a paradiddle naturally has these accents on the right and the left hand. Apparently, I forget who told me, but Elvin Jones used to warm up with something like this to kind of get a little melody thing happening between the toms. And it's also just easy on the hands. So moving it from regular. So it's just another, you know, rudiment or thing your hands already know how to do that you might have not explored doing it that way. You know, a paradiddle is good for learning how to do ghost notes. You know, that whole, this, you know, just moving it to the hi-hat and snare. And then you're in Fusion Town. So again, it's taking like a basic thing and kind of exploring with it. So I've talked about this accent routine I do in 5 before in the how to practice lesson. And the cool thing about that is it reveals phrases within itself. It kind of gives you like a double melody. So let's take the right, left, left sticking, for example. So in 5, it's, so you can break that up between 2 drums. So you have this melody. And then when you add the accents, you start getting this. You kind of have 2 melodies happening at the same time. And if you do the single version, so, you know, phrasing is a loose thing, but it's also kind of how you express yourself outside of the beat, let's say. You're here, which to me is your feel and your groove. all the stuff you're adding on top of that is the phrasing. Okay, and so as far as the Charlie Hunter tune goes, that tune, I initially, when I heard it, it's like, we actually only played that song twice. We played it for 1 second right after he wrote it, and I initially played this. which is cool. I mean, I love playing that feel, but it felt a little too predictable for me, that 16th thing. So I actually played quarter notes here and little ghosties on the snare. So it's the beat I'm actually playing is kind of. Basically that with some ghosted notes on the snare. And I didn't have these when we did the record, so maybe I would have played that. And again, when I'm playing all this stuff, I'm singing that boom, boom, boom. So that's when I'm probably gonna be playing the right stuff, is because I'm not thinking about the drums, I'm thinking about the other instruments in the song. So I hope this has shed some light on how I kind of put things together, and hopefully you can see how that works in a musical context with those two songs. And again, if you guys have any questions, y'all can email me, cartermclean@gmail.com, and I hope y'all have a great day. See you soon. Cheers.